Hopefully you're all here because you read the session description, but we're going to be really leveraging the work of the infamous Dale Carnegie of How to Win Friends and Influence People with the tactical negotiation strategies of Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. I'm assuming most of you have probably heard of Dale Carnegie. Some of you may not have heard of Chris Voss. Highly encourage you to read both books because they apply very practical strategies that have many similarities, but we're going to go through the tactical strategies, how to leverage those in this conversation today. From leveraging empathy, active listening, and persuasive negotiation techniques to cultivate relationships and usually move a dialogue towards mutually beneficial outcome. Who am I? My name is Adam Perker. I'm a client solutions specialist here at Carnegie. I actually don't get the fun opportunity to meet most of you every day because in my role, I actually am client-facing, where I actually am the first face that many potential Carnegie clients will see. On the new business team, I essentially conduct discovery interviews, meeting new clients, rapidly establishing and building rapport, and then hopefully identifying a few pain points to see where Carnegie potentially help our clients surpass their needs. But I can't do it alone. I want to thank everybody in this room because all of the great work that you do, Carnegie continues to grow and evolve and makes my job significantly easier. So I appreciate all the hard work that everybody does. My archetype colors are green, yellow, red. I'm the innovative and curious globetrotter, an archetype that I think is oh so accurate because I cut my teeth in higher ed, not only visiting the 97 smallest high schools in Northeast Iowa when I started my admissions counselor days, but then eventually moving to some of the largest cities around the world, traveling to 42 countries on 6 continents. At times, I grew up in a town of 1,400 people. I'd be visiting Tokyo, Japan, literally being like, I'm the only person not only from Holstein that's ever been to Tokyo, but the only person from Iowa who may actually be in Tokyo here. Through that work, I really got to meet a lot of new people, understand key interaction points of what drives conversations, but then also practice tactical negotiation skills that a lot of times growing up in the States, I don't think you got to leverage because anytime you go to a convenience store, everything has a set price. So oftentimes negotiation is viewed as or othered where you don't get to practice all that often. So I really appreciated this role because it opened my eyes to tactical negotiation strategies. This is a picture from Thailand where I was at a hawker stall and got to negotiate a very delicious coconut to soothe my thirst for the day. What are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about establishing and building rapport, really the building blocks of any strong communication habits or strong relationship. We're going to go through tactical negotiation strategies to push that conversation along to mutual agreeable outcomes. And then we're going to get awkward. Each and every one of you, we may split out into breakout rooms to practice some of the skills that we learned today. So the first step is building rapport. Which are essentially the ground rules for any solid interaction. In this section of the conversation, I'm going to walk through a few of the timeless Dale Carnegie best practices for establishing rapport and building relationships if you haven't read the book. Some of this content will be getting to know you 101, so I don't imagine that I'll awe-inspire many of you. But if you haven't built the book, any good relationship is built on a strong foundation, similar to the way any good house is. If you follow me on any social media, you know I like DIY a lot of projects, and I know how important a strong foundation is. Or in the words of Ben Arendt, you never want to get drinks with transactional people. Therefore, we're going to explore those building blocks of relationships and explore really how to open up conversations. First, the idea of networking. Oftentimes, networking is viewed as a bit uncomfortable. Often ideas of self-doubt, questions of, am I awkward? Will this person like me? These are all ideas that are all too common, but there are a few ways that you can begin to get over these feelings with a little strategy and practice. Dale Carnegie first starts with talking about becoming genuinely interested in other people. Previous to Carnegie during the pandemic, I worked in alumni relations with the College of Medicine. This was the early days of the pandemic. You can all remember all too well. Realistically, I was stuck at home, but my job was to connect alumni with current medical students, which in a remote environment was somewhat difficult. So I do what everybody did in 2020. I started a podcast. Having worked in international relations, I had never been a doctor. My only interactions with a hospital was actually going to get stitches when I was in 7th grade. So I didn't have anything too much in common. But something I quickly learned, whether you're talking with a new resident or a doctor that has spent 50 years in medicine, if you're genuinely interested and practice active listening, you can build some common ground and build relationship pretty quickly. Active listening is pretty common and very easy to do. First, it's being present. In the attention economy, I think it's really hard to be present, especially in a virtual environment. I do not doubt that each and every one of you has probably checked your phone at least once or have a secondary tab or Asana task that is currently open. It's hard to be present, but that's the first step in active listening. Second, maintain eye contact. Third, smile or subtly gesture, especially in Zoomland, where so much of our interaction is just based on a 2x2-inch screen. It's so important to come into every conversation with a genuine curiosity, smile, and then subtly mirror the behaviors of the person you're talking to. Being that we are social creatures, we often pick up on these subtle cues that other people are exuding. So whether they're happy, you tend to be happy. If they touch your face, you'll tend to touch your face, as I see a few of you just touch your face right there. And then lastly, remember names. Secondly, Dale Carnegie talks about in terms of talking to other people's interests, or something Carnegie calls tactical empathy, which is becoming completely aware of the other side's feelings. How often are you having conversations with a boyfriend, girlfriend, coworker, and the other side you just feel isn't viewing your reality? Because it may not be your reality. It may be their truth. It's their point of view. This really comes to understanding your audience. Whether you're building a presentation deck, meeting agenda, or deliverable, first think of your audience and then craft the message. The biggest mistake early in relationships are pushing your agenda without understanding the other side's pain point, or understanding their why. You're never going to be able to move an audience if they aren't speaking your language. There are easy ways to do this, and oftentimes it comes from finding similarities. What do you have in common? What do you like to do? Does this align with what you like to do? And elaborating on that. The third key point from Dale Carnegie is arouse in person an eager want, which really comes down to just understanding motivations. As yourself, if you understand the other side's desire, you can work towards a common goal or outcome. Is transactional conversation or at a convenience store buying gas and leaving, or are you looking to do something deeper, aka develop a relationship or potentially find a partner? Carnegie also emphasizes the idea to never criticize other people, because one thing that I really truly love about remote work is the friction that it takes in order to gossip around the water cooler, because criticisms oftentimes activate negative feelings, especially early on in relationships. We should work to deactivate negative feelings, whether that's fear, suspicion, anger, aggression, distrust. Criticism, like human nature, immediately raises alarm bells. And we all know one or two people that constantly bring up negative emotions. The goal, don't be that person. Aim to magnify emotions, trust, comfort, and rapport. You can do this by giving genuine praise or sincere appreciation for their time, whether this is one reason why I love the gratitude channel. It's so easy to do, and it builds so much rapport between the person you're giving gratitude to and the entire community. I was just on a discovery call the other day with Ben, in which he simply complimented the institution's website. An easy thing to do that is very low lift. But what he did is, by establishing that rapport, we found out how proud they were of their newly released website. And also during that discovery gave me things that I know I didn't have to talk about or elaborate on, because I knew how pleased they were with that potential engagement. So just be genuinely curious and positive. You never know where it's going to take you. This next step is really just setting yourself up for success, which is really easy to do. The first thing, if you know it's a work event, do your research. Before every discovery conversation, I need to know who's going to be in the room, what are their titles. That way I know what influence they have over their institution, whether it's the director of marketing, director of enrollment, whether it's the CRM manager. There are easy things I can do in the research phase to understand what CRM the institution uses, the CMS or client management system or vendors they may be using. And then any other common pain points or potential red flags that I can either bring up later in the conversation as I'm preparing my dialogue, or red flags that I know that I don't want to, I can avoid, like criticisms. The second thing is, in Zoomland, it's really easy, and I don't think we talk enough about like our presentation of what we can do, whether that's easy things like investing in a microphone or framing yourself up. So much of human language is body language, which in Zoomland you lose like 80% of body language. So the more of your body that you can actually show in Zoom world helps the other person relate, and you're able to communicate more, which is so easy. So next, let's transition into Chris Voss's negotiation techniques. Literally everything we do in life is negotiation. You're in negotiations all day long. Asana deadlines, planning dinner with your spouse. How many of you are asked that question nightly and hate it? Buying a new car. I literally just bought a new car, and these principles help me negotiate the process for anchoring the car dealer on the price that I wanted to sell my Jeep for, be able to ask calibrated questions to understand what they can do or what they cannot do. And I was able to sell my Jeep for over the Kelley Blue Book value price, which I thought was awesome and usually can happen or doesn't happen in the car negotiation prices. The biggest stereotype negotiation have is that they're always win-lose. A great negotiation is more about mutual agreeable outcomes. In the car example I just shared, I had ordered my truck literally a year and a half ago during the supply crisis, which was impossible to get a used vehicle. I don't know if anybody bought a car during that time, but it was like impossible. And every used car was really expensive. But since I waited so long, when the truck came in, I found out that it wasn't the exact truck that I had actually ordered. So I could either walk or I could potentially ask for additional things. And I was able to ask for something in return, which the car dealer got what they wanted. They got to sell me a vehicle, and I got what I wanted, an increased price on my Jeep. So we're going to explore a few tactical negotiation trips from Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. Chris, if you don't know, is a former hostage negotiator and trains with the FBI hostage crisis situations. He shares techniques. He shares techniques based on experiences negotiating with terrorists, kidnappers, and criminals. His book, similar to Carnegie, emphasizes the importance of empathy, active listening, and understanding emotions for your audience. So what are a few tactical strategies that you can utilize? A few key themes emerge from Carnegie and Chris Voss's book. Those are calibrated questions, mirroring, and labeling to effectively navigate and influence negotiations to achieve favorable outcomes. Overall, the book provides practical advice and some pretty mind-blowing stories to help you recognize easy areas in your life that you could improve your negotiation strategies. These tools are really built to do a few key things: gather more information, but really keep the other side talking, because every conversation is a two-way street. So first, let's talk about open-ended questions. In the chat, if you could, give a thumbs up if this has ever occurred to you, or in how many have you been on a first date, had a text conversation, or just trying to communicate with another person, and that person always just responds with one-word answers? Has that ever happened to anybody? Yeah. Is this because your date is a dud, or is it potentially related to your line of questioning? Usually by asking closed questions, or those that you can easily answer with yes or no type answers, can potentially stop the conversation because it provides the other person an easy way out, putting the onus on you in order to drive the conversation. What if you were able to utilize open-ended questions? A few of you probably know what open-ended questions are. If you could put a few examples of open-ended questions in the chat, could you please do that without me providing the answers here? Okay. Exactly. Who, what, when, where, why. But most importantly, who and what. By asking open-ended questions, you not only keep the conversation going, but you give the other side the illusion of control. People love, love, love to be asked what to do or how to do something. The hardest part of developing early relationships is often a lack of background or context. So you have to be genuinely curious, oftentimes vulnerable, and be real. One reason that I really love traveling is because it opens friendships up to extraordinary highs. It opens friendships up to extraordinary highs, but oftentimes what you remember most about traveling are the extraordinary lows. After a trip, most times after a few months or years, you don't remember the spectacular view. You don't remember the cab ride or anything like that. You remember the grind or the moment you were at the weakest. And oftentimes that's like your survivorship bias kind of playing through. I remember after college, my friends and I went on a Boundary Waters trip to northern Minnesota on the border of Canada. And I was a broke college student at the time. I had just graduated, spent every last dollar in college, and we're going on a trip to the Boundary Waters in which you're portaging your boat. You had to bring all your food and water with you for a week. Before the trip, we had to go to Cabela's in order to get all of our necessary supplies to outfit us for this trip. But I had literally like $5 to my name. And all my friends had all the equipment they needed, rain jackets, gear. So when I was applying, I was really excited because my brother was in the military and he provided me with his rain gear that the military issued for him. And one of my friends bought a $5 poncho from Cabela's. We were excited. I was pumped. But going into that trip, it was all sunshine and rainbows for the first 5 days until it started raining. And as it started raining, I thought, bring it on. I have military grade rain gear. I can bring anything at me. Within the first 3 minutes, I was absolutely soaked. And my friend with $5 poncho had ripped his poncho. So we're on the verge of like hypothermia as we kind of navigated the Boundary Waters for the next 2 days. The whole trip was great, but I can tell you that is the one thing that I consistently remember. So in order to get to some of those vulnerable moments, you need to ask yourself a few questions, whether that be factual questions of how long have you worked here? Factual questions are these first conversation questions that usually come up. Second are causal questions, like how long did you happen to find Carnegie, or did you find someone at Carnegie before starting? And the third are value-based questions. These questions help you determine a person's value system. Often, if you listen to podcasts, these are the most engaging, in-depth type answers that folks give. Tell me about Steve. Tell me something about Steve that made you want to join Carnegie. If you ever had to do it again, what would you do differently? Those are the things right there. The second negotiation tactic is mirroring. Mirroring is a practice of active listening in which you're getting the other side to elaborate or share information about their perspective, to share how or why they would potentially want to do something, or getting them to present their idea in their own words. So with active listening, you essentially just are repeating the last 1 to 3 words of what they said in an upward tone at the end, and just shut up. Enjoy the awkward silence. The other side will easily fill that awkward silence. Everybody knows they hate silence in Zoomland, and they'll just continue to elaborate on their thoughts, simply just by sharing the last 1 to 3 words that they said. An example of this, people often share stories of their family. For instance, my parents are from a small town, and whenever they travel, they really love to eat at McDonald's. Oftentimes, they think it is a delicacy. They love the fish sandwich, for instance. Recently, my mother came to town, and they were complaining because the fish sandwich they usually ordered with lettuce, they usually ordered but didn't come out with lettuce. When confronting the cashier heard this and simply generated an effective mirror. It came without lettuce, they said. In doing so, this helped my parents recognize during their ordering process that they had never actually ordered the lettuce with their fish sandwich, effectively diffusing the conversation and getting the cashier to get what she wanted, which is obviously the customers kind of go away. So that's an example of an effective mirror. Next is labeling. This is a picture of the human brain, which when it lights up, senses of emotion are really processed in the amygdala. So if you can play on these senses of emotion during a conversation, you can usually get the other side to either advocate for what they're saying or recognize what they're actually feeling. And all this is simply verbally identifying something that you see, hear, or think of. as a person shares their story. So anytime you've been talking with a significant other, it seems like you're frustrated. It seems like you're angry. It seems like you're happy. It looks like you really enjoyed this deliverable, for instance. It's just an easy way for you to identify the emotions that the other side is feeling, which allows the other group to either correct you if it's incorrect, or allows them to affirm their perception of the situation, and really drive towards more outcomes there. So those are the three areas that we kind of talked about today. So calibrated questions, effective mirroring, or kind of repeating the last three words of a conversation, and then labeling or identifying feeling within the other person. What we're going to do now, we're going to take 3 minutes just to practice an awkward conversation, where hopefully we're going to break out into groups of 3, and just kind of have a conversation. So start by one person just simply asking what you're passionate about, and then the other 2 people in the room can practice calibrated questions, labeling, and mirroring. So if we could break out into breakout rooms, that would be great.
All right. Everyone should be in a breakout room. If you are not, let me know. I can get you assigned to one.
Ugh. Thanks, Maureen.
No problem. Just making sure every room has people. Okay. Here, Adam, I'm going to pause the recording. Looks like we're getting some people back.
How was the conversation? Hopefully a little bit awkward, and hopefully you got to know each other a little bit better.
It was good.
Have either of you heard of Chris Voss prior to this conversation? I don't know if either of you have ever heard of like Masterclass.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
There's some great content. Chris Voss's book is highly engaging, and he tells great stories. But I just downloaded Masterclass, and yeah, he puts on a good show. Okay, everyone is back. I really appreciate everybody sticking around, getting a little awkward here at the end, in a conversation in a breakout room. Hopefully you got the gears turning to not only think through how you can proactively build rapport, connect authentically, set yourself up for success, but ask calibrated questions, and then mirror responses to your audience and label feelings that you can get accurate responses. If you haven't, I highly encourage you to either listen or read both Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, or share Chris Voss's book. Sincerely appreciate the time today. I'll look forward to seeing everyone at the next chat. So thank you very much. Have a nice day.